The Oscar. Strangely considered by some as the British answer to the Mini Moog, although in truth it offers many more features and has rightfully become a bona fide classic in its own right. Oscar was the brainchild of exemplary British designer Chris Huggett, whose previous work included the Wasp and Nat synthesizers, which spawned a generation of teenage synth heads back in the late 70s. The Oscar was embraced by bands and artists including Underworld, Orbital, Stevie Wonder, Ultravox and even Oscar Peterson. Yep, I shit you not, Oscar Peterson had an Oscar. And if anything, Oscar was probably influenced more by the ARP Odyssey than the Mini Moog. In fact, ex-Oxford Synthesizer Company programmer, see what I did there, Paul Whiffin, explains that many people such as Billy Currie were putting their Odysseys through distortion boxes, and this spawned an idea whereby the Oscar would have an overdrive circuit built into the instrument itself, the legendary filter drive. This was a smart move, and one of the features that enabled the instrument to create a diverse range of tones from clean and precise to dirty and distorted. In fact, when the first units were ready for shipping, Paul programmed the first sound as an emulation of Billy Currie's then famous overdriven ARP Odyssey lead sound, and took it to the studio where Ultravox were recording. Rumour has it the band were impressed enough to order one each. Another smart idea that set Oscar apart from its contemporaries was the incorporation of an additive wave section. With this, you can either select a series of preset waves, or create your own with up to 24 harmonics. Then, if required, you can combine this bespoke additive waveform with other more traditional waveforms such as square wave, sawtooth and pulse width modulation. However, it must be said that the method of creating your own additive waves was entirely cumbersome, and that's why we developed the matrix grid on the Imposcar and now Imposcar 2. No more prodding buttons to set levels, just move the lights until you have the combination of harmonics that works for you. You can save it too. In essence, the Oscar was a 2-oscillator synth that offered monophonic and duophonic playing capabilities. Having selected or created your oscillator waveforms and set their respective ranges in this section, you then set a balance between each oscillator. The single LFO provided several waveforms as well as rate and intro controls. The latter was yet another smart idea because this allowed you to set up sounds where modulation was gradually introduced to a sound over time without having to resort to things like the mod wheel. As you'd expect, modulation could be routed to pitch, filter or both. All of which leads us neatly on to one place where the Oscar stood head and shoulders above its contemporaries. Yep, the legendary filter section. Whereas the oscillators on the Oscar were 8-bit digital, the filters are pure thoroughbred analog, and over the years it's been a constant source of amazement just how good these filters really are. Now I say filters plural because the Oscar has two 12 dB filters that run in series to create 24 dB filtering. And aside from low pass, band pass and high pass modes, you can separate their resonant peaks via the aptly named separation knob. Now with this and the aforementioned filter drive, you can coax all manner of wonderful tones out of the instrument, from subtle vowel-like textures which have the drive backed off and separation fully applied, to full-on dirty leads and basses with full-on drive, resonance and no separation. In fact, another reason why the Brit Mini Moog comparison is somewhat disingenuous is that on the Mini Moog, the more resonance you apply, the more the bass frequencies attenuate. With the Oscar's filter drive and separation control, this need not be the case, proving that it is indeed a vastly versatile synthesizer. The Oscar goes even further still, with memories, an onboard sequencer, an arpeggiator, and envelope repeat modes. Now this offered more control over sound sculpting than any other monophonic synth available at the time. So, the obvious question is, why wasn't it the huge success it should have been? The answer probably lies in several places. Firstly, we know some people who love the sound, but positively loathe the styling, while others just adored its chunky, borderline rubber fetish design. Secondly, and probably more importantly, was timing. Oscar was released in 1983 with a price tag of around £600. Now this price tag wouldn't have been such a major stumbling block for a fully featured monosynth had it not have been for the fact that the synth world was really waiting for an affordable programmable polysynth. Now the Juno 6 had delivered a non-programmable polysynth the year before for only £100 more than the Oscar. But add to that the memories that the Juno 60's release offered the same year, and it's easy to understand how the Oscar got lost amongst the stampede. Nonetheless, those who did embrace it used it to such an effect that over time it became one of the world's most sought after and highly prized synths. And if you think that's hype, consider this. That £600 price tag in 1983 is more like £2,500 for one in good condition these days. And add to that the fact that only around 2,000 were made, and this means second-hand prices aren't likely to deflate anytime soon. Their increasing rarity and fantastic sound were two reasons why we decided to make the initial Imposcar and its recent successor, the Imposcar 2. That and the fact that we wanted to hear what the mythical ASG, which was a polyphonic Oscar prototype that Chris Huggett had in development when the company closed its doors, we just wanted to know what that might have sounded like. In fact, our love of the sounds available from this instrument even went as far as us commissioning a bespoke hardware controller for the Imposcar 2, enabling us to interact with our labour of love with exactly the same kind of tactile control as was possible with the original. Of course, with Imposcar and Imposcar 2, there are a wealth of additions that the original didn't have. For example, polyphony, and now polyunison on the Imposcar 2. There are other things too, like an improved arpeggiator, keyboard velocity response, aftertouch, an extra LFO, independent pulse width modulation for each oscillator, a ring modulator and more filter modes, etc. But each of these enhancements have been done with a firm eye on the design philosophy and operational architecture of the original legend that is Oscar.